We welcome everybody here this morning. Is Brenda here? Is she on the? Is she here?
Yes, I'm
Brenda. Okay, very good. I was saying that. Well, I might have to do it myself.
That would be
No,
okay.
no. You're the expert in that area. So I'm gonna I'm gonna hand off the baton to you. And again, Brenda is our Title VI coordinator from the San Juan School District. I know that she wears a couple of hats there, and she can, a little bit of her background, and she can express that and what she does, and then we'll give her the program this morning. Hey, appreciate that, Brenda. So you're on.
Okay. So I went ahead and shared my screen. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? Because I can't see it
Yeah.
on my screen.
Yes,
Okay.
we can see it.
Yat a she Brenda Whitehorse and she so it and the inch dots and the Jenny Bushes chain. Kia ani the Chanel dot kachitni the shache. Though I use in a sha de a Tayanichi de Nasha, which is Rehoboth, New Mexico. Although Kehisht Engi a Zilti Glui the A the A Kehisht. So I live in Blanding, Utah. And I'm the San Juan School District Heritage Language Director. And just to give you a little background, um, I know that you've worked a lot with Clayton Long, and he has had many years here at the school district, all the Indian education programs. His leadership and his ability to bring forth native language programs to San Juan School District is work that needs to be honored and celebrated, and which also allows me and other people in our district to continue the important work of language preservation. So I'm just really grateful for Clayton Long and the work that he has done, and those are big shoes to fill, but we're doing our best. So I guess what I would like to share first of all is, having a Title VI program encompasses a lot of different things. So one of the things that we do, and it's a year-long process, is really taking a look at our programs and working with our tribal nations. So with San Juan School District, we have the Navajo Nation, and then we have our Ute, White Mesa Ute tribe, and the Ute Nation that we consult with. So based on that, we have a flow chart on how that consolidation happens, and then what types of information to gather, how that information is put together so that we can continue these programs for our students. So I'm just taking a look at this. Right now, we are in April and May. So in April and May, we gather spring sports data, accept formal recommendations for improvement from the tribal consolidation. We just had our Navajo Nation consolidation meeting a couple of weeks ago. And within that, they have certain things that they would like to know, like our graduation rate, information specifically about our Title VI and Johnson O'Malley program, and then our native language programs, how are we servicing students? And then they have other information that they like to know, like how many of our Native American students are participating in sports? How many of our Native American students are participating in like AP classes? So there's certain information that they would like to know. And so based on that, we gather data to present that information, but we also use that data to help us do program planning. So in June, we advertised for the school board meeting to review yearly data, and we respond to formal recommendations, accept formal recommendations for improvement. So it's kind of like a continuous process, and I'm sure you do the same thing with your programs. And then in July, we do a formal review. We respond to any written recommendations, except formal recommendations for improvement. And part of this process for us, being right kind of like in this, in southeastern Utah, a large portion of our student population is Navajo. So about 60% of our students in San Juan School District are Navajo, and about, I would say less than 5% are white, Mesa Ute, and other tribes. So due to that, I don't know if you're familiar with the Navajo Nation, but the Navajo Nation has a lot of local governance that they have in place. So they have chapter houses and different levels of government. So we actually have to work with the local chapter houses and do presentations at times. And they'll ask us to present on different programs that we're that we have for students. And then also if they have any concerns, they'll contact us and say, we want to know more information about that. So that's why it says accept recommendations for improvement. And then in August, we consult again. It just goes all the way around. We consult again with the Navajo and Ute tribes. So it's a continuous partnership is kind of how I like to think about it. And that continues into October and September. And they like to ask certain things in the fall, I've noticed, and certain things in the spring. So like in the fall, they'll usually ask us like, how many students are we serving? How many of those students are in certain programs? What's our curriculum? How are we assessing students? What's our plan for the school year for our school improvement plans? Like for our school district, we have 90-day plans. So, they ask us a lot of questions like that we have to respond to. And then what does our data look like from the spring for student achievement data? So a lot of it is just asking us a lot of that information, and then it just continues. So that's what this is. And then we do have an IEC committee. This is supposed to be IEC, but Indian Education Program Committee, but it's the IEC. So, and on our IEC, we have parents from all of our communities that represent their schools. And this committee is very important because it's the voice of the parents, and also helps with making sure that the JOM funds that we have are pretty much meeting the needs of the students. And, it's kind of a checks and balance system for our school district. So they really have an important role, and I really am very appreciative of the work that they do for our district. So the grant provides salaries for Title VI staff, which is, just a portion of my salary, but it helps fund 4 of our heritage language teachers. So it gives us a little bit of money for travel to attend Title VI meetings, provide professional development for our staff. We have one planned this afternoon. So, with the professional development piece, it's also ongoing and continuous. And, the work is never finished. There's always something to look forward to and something to plan. Our focus this afternoon on our PD is going to be about planting the seeds of Navajo language for our students. How can we get more of our students to speak the language in the classroom? So that's going to be our focus. And then we also have a guest speaker that will be talking about working with students, overcoming the COVID stress, virtual learning, being at home, and looking at that through the lens of a traditional Navajo perspective. So we try to include topics and things that relate directly to our students and to our teachers in our professional development. And then, of course, supplies and materials. And we have our Heritage Language Conference. Some of you probably attended that in years past. This year, we actually had our conference virtually, and you can actually go onto our website and go to Native American Indian Education Programs, and it'll be under Title VI. It'll say Heritage Language Conference, and you can check out our virtual conference that we did this fall. All of our schools are included in the Title VI program district-wide based on their American Indian student population. So is there any questions so far about like similarities to how your programs are going compared to ours? I know since we have a larger student population that are Native American, our program might look different than the programs that you have up north in the, like in Salt Lake School District. So I don't think you can also put your questions in the chat, I guess.
Yes. Okay. I was just going to make a comment. Just a small bit, your consultation with the Navajo tribe for the rest of the Title VI, we don't have the JOM, we don't have the heritage language piece. However, that we have the Title VI, so there I think that's a little bit different, and I think that. You're a little bit closer to the Navajo tribe, and and portions of those schools are on the reservation. So you expect that they are going to ask a few more questions in terms of the other programs other than Title VI. So that's just kind of my comment.
Okay, yeah, and we do have to report more data because of that, because of the close relationship. We also have we participate in the Navajo Nation Department of Education professional development meetings. So we just had one this past week where all our heritage language teachers got on and they presented. And a lot of their presentations are presented in Navajo. So their concepts and things that they were presenting on this week was parent engagement and involving parents in virtual learning setting. So those are the types of things that we're discussing right now due to the pandemic. But we do have a parent representative, like I said, in all of our communities that represent our communities from Bluff, Navajo Mountain, Monument Valley, Montezuma Creek, all the way up to Blanding, White Mesa, into Monticello. So because our district is so large in comparison to other districts, we have a lot more schools to serve, a lot more students to serve. So that is a unique situation for us. So this is what our Title VI budget looks like. 92.3% of our budget is in personnel because they're direct services to students. And with that is the heritage language teacher salary, just a small portion of my salary, travel, and then you can look at the travel, it's just 1.7%. So we use other funds to kind of supplement our program so that we can make sure that we meet the needs of our students. And like supplies, we only have 0.7%. The contracts that we do for the 4,900, usually that's during our Heritage Language Conference when we have guest speakers come and present, and that's only 1.5% of our budget. Other professional development, that's usually with the heritage language teachers. I usually try to get presenters that can present in Navajo and meet the needs of our teachers, and then through partnerships. So we have presentation this afternoon is through Utah Navajo Health System. They have a traditional practitioner that's also like a Navajo language and culture specialist, but he also does a lot of behavioral health. And his presentation is going to be about COVID, helping students cope with the COVID stress, and and how that relates to Navajo philosophy and how the Navajo language teachers can support their students, once in virtual setting, and then once they get back into in-person learning. So, we try to do that, but sometimes we do have to pay out consultant fees. Our indirect cost is only 2.83%. And then that makes up our whole budget. So think about our heritage language program. I think the slideshows I shared with you look a little different, but pretty much it's the same thing. I think I shared with you, let me pull up my other one because I had to go into Google Docs because of the font. So let me do that so you can see. I'm gonna change that out just a little bit so I'll have the right slides. And I give a lot of presentations, so I apologize sometimes. I change things out every year and make sure that the most accurate information is being shared each year within our program. Maybe that was the right slides. Yeah, it looks like that was. So does that look like the ones that I sent you? The slides that I was showing?
Yes, the front page does.
Okay.
I haven't looked at the rest.
Okay. So I apologize for this. I just noticed that the font wasn't coming out, and I have some words in Navajo. And when you have the number characters that come up in the Navajo font, it just doesn't look the same. But I'll go ahead and continue to share that. Okay, so, all right. So within our Navajo language and culture instruction program, we really have a strong emphasis in keh. And keh is pretty much our Navajo family structure. So the way that we have our clan system, and I know we had some previous presentations where they talked about that in terms of, our clan system being starting maternal and then going into paternal. So what's really important about keh is not only that students are able to learn about their family structure, but also to learn about how other students in their classroom can relate to them. So it really helps build a classroom community in terms of developing relationships within the classroom, but it also goes past that. It can also develop relationships within the school. Can you all hear me?
Yes, I think everybody can hear. Yes.
Okay. For some reason, I can't see anything on the screen, so I don't know if what I'm presenting and what I'm saying is being heard. So I'm sorry. I'm just double checking.
And I just took a look at the one you sent me, and it is different.
Okay, so that's fine. I can go ahead and make adjustments in terms of that. I think this was the one that I sent you. It's a little different, but it's pretty much very similar. So we do have a lot of information that we share in terms of keh, culture, history, government, and language. This knowledge gives us strength to tackle school and life challenges. So I don't know how many of our participants are Navajo online, but something that my grandmother always used to say to me is, "Ahwijit ego eya, she wait she yeshe, go eya ishin yat ehi, ndidi lash and they." So she would say, "Granddaughter, it's going to be up to you to do the hard work and to pursue education, and so that you can make something of yourself. So, and that's kind of like the philosophy that goes with you know, you have yourself, which is, you know, usually your maternal side. So for me, it would be so that's my maternal clan. And so based on that, all the clans have their own stories and their own history of how the clans came to be. And some of our Navajo people are reluctant to share their clan stories because some of the stories go way back in history where there were, you know, a joining of clans, and a clan became one clan. And we also have some clans that were extinct that are no longer here, but that ties to our creation story. So with even just the and our Navajo clan system, there's so much to learn, and there's, you know, there's many layers of education that comes from that. And then when you go into culture, that's the same way again. You know, we at San Juan School District, we have our curriculum project that we are working on. And within that curriculum project, we have a lot of things to cover when it comes to culture and language. So just to give you an example, you know, we have teachings about, you know, kinalta and the puberty ceremony. We also have teachings about, you know, the Navajo wedding basket. So, and then there's also teachings about the 4 directions in terms of philosophy, in terms of the sacredness of those 4 directions in our 4 sacred mountains. So it really extends, and through that extension, you can build a lot of curriculum. And there's just so much information to share. And, you know, all of that has to be organized in some form or fashion. And we do have like a multiple of resources. If you ever checked out our Heritage Language Resource Center, there's a lot of resources that we have. But within those resources, we really have to be mindful, you know, like how are we going to teach these standards, the Navajo language standards, and how are we going to present this information? So, you know, there's just so much to share. And with it, we do have a curriculum binder. I know with Zoom and Google, I can go like from screen to screen. I'm not too sure about Microsoft Teams, if I can do that, because I wanted to share that with you so you can see. But this past year, our Navajo language teachers got together and we looked at all of our resources. We looked at the Navajo language Diné content standards, and we started working on our curriculum. We looked at what was already built and what was already created by you know, former directors and former teachers, and then we started building on that. So, and the biggest challenge that we had this year was the virtual learning, making all of this instruction relevant to the students. And so we had to do a lot of virtual lessons, and that was kind of like something very different for not only our teachers but our students, because now where we were expecting them to get into Canvas, we were expecting them to pull up resources from Google Docs. And then we had all these internet connection issues in our San Juan River schools where our internet wasn't working properly. So teachers went even as far as presenting their lessons on their school website to also sharing their information on Facebook. So when you get on Facebook, you'll probably see a lot of lessons from our teachers that they have created. And so there is just so much that we were able to do in just 1 year due to the virtual learning. And I'm sure that's what happened to everybody. It kind of puts you on a, like on a fast forward kind of movement to where like, okay, we have to teach differently because of our virtual learning setting. So that's kind of what happened with us as well. And of course that changed how we presented our information or cultural instruction about culture, history, and government. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a little bit. And I want to kind of see what the needs are of our participants today. There's a lot of information. Some of you have Title VI programs. And is there something in particular that you would like me to share that might be helpful to you within your Title VI programs? You can put it in the chat. Okay. If there's not like a question or anything, I do want to share with you kind of like what I do with our teachers for professional development. So I shared with everyone a document that had these Navajo rugs on here. So this was actually part of our professional development that we had in February when we were talking, January, February, we were doing a lot of storytelling. And again, during that time, we were doing a lot of our winter storytelling. But this one in particular was to get teachers to kind of like really think critically about how to not only think outside the box of getting more students to speak the language, but also to use things that we have that can make them think about stories that they've heard from their grandparents. So in this first slide, so if you look at this, this is a rug that I found, and it's a storytelling rug, traditional Navajo rug. I wouldn't say it's really traditional, but it's a storytelling rug. And within our culture, we have either sometimes rugs that are weaved to tell a story, but sometimes we also have jewelry where we do like storytelling. So the teachers were able to look at something like this, and they were able to pick up the characters in this picture. So in this picture is of a trading post. And, some of the questions we asked was, Amato Eja Bahadnet. So if I asked one of you, that would be, tell me what the mom and the dad is doing. So they would look at this picture and they would say, oh, Amado Ejaj Iyanayisni. The mother and the father bought groceries from the trading post. So, and so the teachers were really able to look at something like this and create like not only a student activity, but they were also able to create like curriculum and resources and thinking guides for students. So this was actually one of the things that I did with them. The teachers then added more information, and then they shared it with students in their Canvas. So, so these are some things that we do when we have our professional development meetings. Is actually a learning opportunity for not only the teachers, but also for me. So I tell them, this is a way that we share information. And so sometimes we'll get to a topic because our teachers, some of them are very traditional. Some of them come from more of a Christian background. So we have a wide range of teachers and their ability to know about culture and the language. And so we do a lot of sharing of information. And through that, I think the PLCs that we have, the professional development, and how we do our curriculum, it really inspires them to really think about the language and how to teach it, but also it acknowledges the knowledge base that they already have. And so it's helping us to create more of a culture within our PLCs. So this is what we do. And we found several different stories that we thought was just really interesting. This one is about, like a traditional family at their home, and what are they doing? So, you know, and so one of the things that the teachers were saying is, so they were saying that the women are cooking and the men are just sitting there telling stories. So, and you can do that with the students too, you know, and based on what language. And of course, with students, you're going to have to do more scaffolding, providing them the language. As the Heritage Language Director, I kind of think about how I learn language. So for me, I like to see a lot of visuals. I think the visuals really help students to produce the language. And I think the written verbal is important, but for students that are barely learning to speak the language, I think having them, you know, like you do when you're trying to teach students to speak English, you're having them to say the sounds, segment the word, how many syllables are in the word, let's go say the word and pull out that language. It's kind of like the same thing. And then once you connect it to the visuals, and then you can add the spelling and the writing. So that's kind of what I've, tried to tell the teachers for the elementary students. So although they have the written word, they cover the word, and they have the students say the vocabulary, and then use it in a short sentence, and then they extend it. And then the visuals, I think, really help in terms of, what the vocabulary is. And then after that, they can go into spelling. Like this one, Amado Ejahet Ila Yanadnesh Bahadne. So, and that's something that, something that students can talk about in a group, and they can work it out. And so they'll be looking for, who's the mom, who's the dad, and they get into all kinds of really cute conversations based on that. So this is just an activity that we did. There's other resources that we have created within our heritage language, but I wanted to share that because that kind of talks to how we do our professional development and how we do our instruction with Navajo language. So, and I'll go back to this other file. Okay, so that's about that. With the history and the government, what we're doing now is we're looking at secondary classes being different from elementary classes, because the students in the secondary school setting are really earning credit towards graduation. So because of that, we had to think more formal about the secondary Navajo language program. So within our secondary language programs, we offer Navajo 1, Navajo 2, Navajo government, and Navajo culture. And the teachers are working on building pacing guides and curriculum maps specific to those grades. And you can actually see the depth of knowledge or the level of lessons increasing in the secondary, where kids have to actually write. They have to not only think critically about what they're learning, but that's where they do a lot of writing and a lot of reading. So, and then we share our information with Navajo Nation. Like they'll have us give Navajo oral language tests, and then we have to share that information with our schools, and then we have to present on that. We have a site visit that's coming up next Tuesday, where heritage language teachers will be presenting information specific to our Navajo language program. So this is why I was trying to get to the other the other PowerPoint, because DA Dinjo DJ and Sahe case at SO. I figured out a way to get all of my documents into Google so that I don't have this problem. For some reason, after sharing my slides with you, I can't find my original slide. So, but anyways, this is the directional thinking, concept of directional thinking. So this is pretty much understanding the Navajo people and how they think. And it has been part of our culture and our way of life for so many years, you know, even before, you know, before the long walk. And so a lot of these things, teachings have been carried on through storytelling, through ceremonies, through prayers and songs. And so, but it also helps us to not only think about what kids should learn, but the learning process and how that should happen. So within this directional thinking, we have Nsahe case, do nahata, do ina, do sihasen. So Nsahe case, it's the thinking part of our philosophy, and nahata is planning, and then ina is implementing what we plan, and then sihasen is reflection. So you know, all of those pieces are really important in lesson planning and anything. If you're working on a project for your program and you're trying to get things done, it's going to take a lot of planning, a lot of thinking, implementing, and then reflection of how that that plan went. So it's kind of the same thought process that we put into our lesson plans, into our curriculum mapping. You know, the self-reflection really ties into the assessment, the formative assessments that teachers use and how they implement that. And so I guess one of the other things that I wanted to mention with this slide is just, you know, to think about our elders. You know, did on side case, though, did ha ako do I aho shada aho do ate and citizen those case that's kind of what this is about. So our elders have instilled in us you know, to get up early in the morning and to go out to the east and take out our corn pollen and do and offer a prayer each morning. So I don't know how many families still practice that, but that was our Navajo way of preparing ourselves for the day and preparing ourselves for what was supposed to happen that day in terms of our work and family and things that we had to encounter that day. And so with all of that, there's a lot of teachings about the sacred mountains, sacred beings and sacred colors. And so, and then that Hajonjanantkin, that walking in beauty. So, you know, to our youth, I think sometimes they get confused because there's so many things coming at them at all times, you know, with social media. There's all these external factors that happen. And sometimes it's easy to get misguided, you know, and to forget our ways about what's important in life. And the students that we were able to share this philosophy and to let him know this is our philosophy, this is our people's philosophy, this is how we were able to survive the long walk, how we were able to survive hunger and you know, a lot of the stressors in life. We're able to survive that because of this traditional thought process, you know, and how in our relationship with Mother Earth and Father Sky, and greeting our holy people and our sacred deities. So with all of that, sometimes there's this big, I guess, controversy, like, are we teaching religion or are we teaching philosophy? And so we tell them, this is our philosophy. It's important for you to know about it. Just as you're learning about the Greek, myths and different things like that, it's important for you to learn about our Navajo philosophy. So, and a lot of this really has helped our students cope with a lot of the stressors, like with COVID. And we've noticed a huge push this past year with more of our students learning from home. We noticed that their families were able to expose them more to the language and traditional teachings from home. So we really press that in our homes to have the parents come and relearn. And some of the parents that we have are relearning with their children too. So when we send out assignments to students, when we do presentations, parents will comment, I'm learning right along with my child. My mom and my dad never taught me how to speak the language and taught me the culture and everything and the history. So we do have some of our people that have, maybe for, I kind of blame it. Well, I don't like to use the word blame, but, if you think about all the tragic things that have happened to our people, like, the long walk, the boarding school era, a lot of things, we've endured so much tragic things, kids being taken from their families in such a young age and being raised away from home in boarding schools, or being placed with families that were not native. And so there's so many things that they've encountered. And so it's not that there's not an interest to learn the language and the culture. It's the life circumstances that has caused that gap of knowledge for our people in some of our communities. So I guess that's a good thing to reflect. There was someone that was saying that there's a whole nother level of thinking in terms of people that have encountered boarding school, because they have those Navajo relatives that went to boarding schools really felt like they were doing a service to their kids by not teaching them the language and the culture, so they wouldn't have to endure the hardships that they did. But really, that's what created a lot of our language and culture gap, because they thought, oh well, I'm not going to teach my kids how to speak Navajo because I don't want them to go through what I did. People be making fun of them or feeling like it's really not going to help them within the school. So that thinking somewhere happened, but now I think there's a shift again to where a lot of those parents are feeling like, oh, I really missed that opportunity with my children. I should have shared more of the language. I should have shared more of the culture. So you do see that in a lot of the families, a lot of the regret of not passing on those teachings to their kids. So let me see if there was some questions here. Okay. How have you done diversity training with district administrators and school board, and how has it been received? So, Jeannie, at the beginning of the year, all new staff and new employees that come to our district, I do a diversity training, and we talk not only about the programs and the language and the culture, but we also talk about culturally responsive instruction and how having that in your schools will actually help the students not only value who they are as Native people, but also to acknowledge the rich culture and heritage that they have. And teachers and administrators are really open to that within our district. They probably weren't as open many years ago, but now a lot of our administrators really celebrate and honor the culture and heritage of our Native students. And some of our schools in Blanding would like to see more more support for our White Mesa Ute students. So, and what's really been hard is within the White Mesa Ute community, they really don't have like a language, well, I always call it language keepers of the tribes. So to me, the language keepers are the elders or the people that still speak the language and that they can teach the language to their youth and to people who want to learn. So with White Mesa Ute, they have maybe like a couple of elders that can do that, but they're not really able to come into the school setting anymore. So there's a little gap there within our White Mesa Ute, but we're trying to look at, at other resources because the Northern Ute tribes and the Southern Ute tribes, their language is different, and that's what I found out. So, but we do our best to really embrace that diversity. And then, let's see, integrate culture into math, science, and literacy. So because we get tested with Navajo Nation, the language and education standards, they do have a lot of science and math and literacy built into it, but it's kind of a little different. So like the science comes in when you're talking about Mother Earth and Father Sky and the seasons, like the fall planting season, the the spring planting and the fall harvest. So all of that is integrated into the curriculum. And of course, you can teach money, peso, for math. And so the teachers do that in the calendar days. A lot of that, they connect to math. But teaching like, mathematical equations in Navajo, that will require a lot of skill and talent and students understanding that language. But some of our students are able to learn more math by actually looking at how our traditional hogan is built and using math to really look at that. And then they also use the beading patterns. A lot of our students like to bead their own jewelry, like their earrings and their medallions. And quite a few of them participate in the powwow and as well as traditional events. So through that, they're able to share some of the math. And then, of course, the literacy. We have stories that we have in the Resource Center that are written in Navajo and in English. So we try to promote that. And a lot of our teachers are working on building new literacy too for their schools. So that's an ongoing project. We do like to integrate as much as we can, Eileen. Okay. And let me go back over here. Okay. All right, I think I answered all the questions. So I want to talk a little bit more about 4 directions and how that can be included in the teaching and learning process. I kind of talked about it a little bit. So really with the 4 directions, we always start with the east. And this direction of the dawn, it gives us our thinking direction. So, and it represents in Saha case, thinking about your learners, thinking about the concepts that need to be taught. So one of the things that the teachers do is they think about the vocabulary that students are going to learn in Navajo, and then how to teach that, and then the standards. So that's the first part of building a lesson. And then of course that planning, preparing your lesson, that's the Nahata, planning and preparing your lessons and your standards. We use a lot of the educational standards in that within our Navajo language teaching. We still need to do the modeling, the guided practice, the independent practice, and the scaffolding. So that's all embedded into the planning. And then, which is our south direction. And then we have our Ina which is the actual implementation of the lesson. So, when we're doing our observations, once teachers are able to have students back in the classroom, they do peer observations, and that's actually putting all of the planning and thinking into action. The learning experience of students using visuals, anchor charts, providing examples, non-examples of the language, and then to the north, see has said that's a reflection of how the lesson went. So that could be your formative assessments, your thumbs up, thumbs down, any kind of assessment that you create that's embedded into that. And students are able to reflect, how did they do? Teachers are able to reflect, how did the lesson go? Where do I need to improve? So it really is part of our traditional thought process when you think about it. Learning is not so foreign when you can connect it to concepts that students and teachers are familiar with. Some of our teachers are more equipped to just present in the Navajo language, and so a lot through our professional development meetings, they're able to do a lot of integration with, okay, this is what I'm used to doing in teaching this lesson, but now I'm able to use Nearpod. I'm able to use technology, maybe create a little video with my students, and create projects. So some of our teachers are learning technology, and that was a huge step for them, because technology can be intimidating, and if you haven't had to use it in anything before in any of your instruction, when you're asked to use something like Canvas, it can be foreign. So I'm just so proud of our Navajo language teachers for the work that they've done with technology. So we do offer Navajo language instruction at Albert Earl Lyman Middle School, Blanding Elementary School, Bluff Elementary, Montezuma Creek Elementary, Monument Valley High School, Navajo Mountain High School, and San Juan High, and Sebindiskai Elementary School in Monument Valley at Whitehorse High School. So the participation rate in terms of how many students are actually participating in the classrooms are a lot higher at the elementary, because most of our students are taking that. But then when they get into secondary, middle school, and high school classes, it kind of goes down, because a lot of the students are trying to take classes towards their graduation requirements. So our Navajo language class starts competing with other classes like CTE classes, AP classes, and things like that. And so we try to do a lot of classroom demonstrations for students so that we can keep them engaged. And even though they're not taking Navajo language class, we have a Unity Club in some of our schools where they can still participate with programs like that. And then we have our Heritage Language Conference that we do each year. And we have our K-6 language fair where kindergarten through 6th grade students are able to do singing, dancing, cultural presentations, reading books in Navajo. And then our 7th through 12th, we actually do a Navajo Culture Bowl. And that involves like a spelling bee, just like a kind of like a competition between groups of how many things they can answer in terms of Navajo government, culture, and history. And so, and that's really fun. So like, what year was the Bosque Redondo Treaty signed? So that might be a question, and then the kids can group together and come up with an answer. And then, if we collect the points, and then based on that, we tell them which school was able to take the Knowledge Bowl that year. We try to come up with different questions for them based on what teachers were able to present. And then our Standing Tall Award is our student recognition. The Standing Tall Award actually came from our IEC and Johnson O'Malley program. And we had an individual within our district. Some of you probably had either been his friend or knew of him. His name was Jim Dandy. So he was a culture and language specialist at our district for many years and worked as a language teacher, helped with a lot of the resources that was built within our resource center. And when he passed, they wanted to honor him for the work that he did at our district by giving a Standing Tall Award. And they actually call it the Jim Dandy Standing Tall Award. And so that can be given to students for any accomplishment. We have a list of things that they can accomplish, whether it's, GPA, playing multiple sports, doing well, like getting maybe their Navajo Nation bilingual seal. So they can be nominated by the school for a lot of different things, and then they're considered for the award at the end of the year. And then with Johnson O'Malley, I don't think a lot of you have the JOM program. So if you do, pretty much is working with the IEC. There's funding that comes out specific for Native American students within your district, and you have to, just like Title VI, you use your CIB forms to generate that funding, and then you have your local Indian Education Committee that will oversee the spending. And pretty much we also work really closely with our Navajo Nation, because that's where our JOM program is from, is through Navajo Nation. So we have Navajo Nation education specialists that come out to the district. They look at our programs, our budgets, and we work closely with them with the JOM program. And these are our bylaws for the IEC membership. It's a little different from Title VI, because in IEC for JOM, they actually have the ability to approve expenditures and to approve budgets and programs, and to make recommendations of things that they would like to see in terms of the Johnson O'Malley program. And how that funding is used is like the teachers or stakeholders within our district, they can make a recommendation and say, like, to the IEC. So if they want to purchase supplies so that they can work on a weaving activity, then they'll still make an expenditure recommendation. The IEC looks at it, and they can either approve it, or they can table it, or they can deny the request if it doesn't meet the JOM policies. So, and then they also have certain goals within the JOM program. A lot of it is seeing Native American students achieve at higher levels of their peers, increasing graduation rates and things like that. So it's kind of like the same goals that Title VI has. So we kind of just, kind of integrate the services between the programs. And these are, we have different members, but these are the schools that are represented. So that's what I have to share. I can also share with you, like, I don't know how many of you are familiar with our education website that we have on the school district. No? Can you see that where it says Native American Education Programs? Okay, so this kind of just gives an overview of all of our programs. If you go into Title VI, this is where you can go to the Virtual Heritage Language Conference. And then this is our language curriculum that I was talking about. It's a beast right now, but it's continuing to grow. So we have our 7 through 12 Denebizah curriculum maps, and then our Case 6. And then these are all of our standards, Navajo language standards that we have to teach. So we've kind of put it into kind of like a progression order. So like this standard here is the nebiza do be old ithiki chush ingo since go do be yashtik go side biget dishtik do late. Utilizing the Navajo language and culture, I will listen, communicate, observe, and understand what I'm being taught. So this first one is Nsahe case all the way through. And then it kind of builds. So like for pre-K, third, I will listen and understand the basic Diné oral language. And then fourth and sixth, it builds on this. It's kind of the same, but I will listen to and understand the basic Diné language. And then here, we would like to see them start verbalizing some of that vocabulary. And then here it goes to, I will listen and understand the basic Diné language. I will listen and communicate effectively with logical Diné language structure appropriate to various situations. So some of these standards, Elaine, can really allow for integration of a lot of those subjects. And what happens is we get tested on these standards from Navajo Nation. So that's why, you know, there is kind of a gap in the testing because teachers, Navajo language teachers kind of have their fun things that they like to teach. So it's kind of like, you know, any other teachers, they have their fun dinosaur theme or they have their fun whatever thing that they like to spend a whole 2 to 3 weeks on teaching because that's their thing, right? So and that was happening within our district, and we weren't getting to a lot of the standards that we were being tested on. So so we started really looking at these standards, and then based on these standards, we were able to do some PLC work. So these are PLC norms that we have, you know, and then we have work that happens within those standards. This one is our norm. We will work together collaboratively with respect. And then 2 is we will think critically and thoughtfully about what the students will learn. And then 3, we will stay on task and topic in all discussions. And then 4, we will be on time. So those are our norms. And then through that PLC work, a lot of our teachers were able to work together to come up with a lot of their own resources that I was telling you about. And some of them are able to use the Google Docs. Some of them are more sticking with the old, you know, PowerPoint slides and things like that. So I'll just show you one lesson that one of our teachers did through Google Docs. So her lesson was about Jildo Sen Benista. So Shinako Nanseto Halonigi Dabish Shil Bahazandole. So Dabishit Shilbazandole. So she's just saying that she will understand the names of things, vegetables and fruits that grow. So I will name various plants within my surroundings. And again, how I was telling you about doing a lot of visuals. So this is Hushkan, and then she was able to put in her visuals, and she extended it too. So she said di Hushkan it Hushkan da dohne, and then the kids would say Hushkan, and then she would say like she Hushkan yo shitlakan. You know, so she would say like, I really enjoy bananas. They're one of my favorite foods. And then she would say, Hela do hashkan bitlakan. And then the students would say, she, you know, or she do shitlakanda. So she did that with her, with all of the fruits in her presentation. So the whoosh for strawberry. And it was fun. I mean, the teachers really enjoyed doing a lot of these things, and they were like, hey, I can do this. I really can develop all this curriculum. And I was telling them, yes, you can. So, and then we took some of the stories that were already out there, like this one here, Beauty Beside Me. We did a Nearpod lesson with this, with the teachers. So, you know, we talked about, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this story, but I love this story. It's about a grandmother and all of her different color skirts, but it kind of goes to all the different settings and this family's timeline of their daily events and how she remembers her grandmother's skirt and how it changed in different settings, like if she was going to the trading post to shop for things, or, you know, just a lot of fun memories. So we actually created a Nearpod activity for this, for collaboration. And well, we'll have to go into Canvas and connect to Canvas to actually do the activity. The other thing that we did is we used screencast and we turned this into a video. And some of you that have access to our San Juan School District Facebook page probably can see that video. Let me go back in here. So to our resources. Nope, not that one. This is the actual, okay, Navizad resources. So here we have a link to our Facebook page. We also had the Navizad newsletter. We also shared that on our page too. And we use Google Docs because we have several different language teachers. They just went in and put in their information for the newsletter. And this was all done through PLC. Teachers wanted to share what they were doing in the virtual setting with families and, you know, what words to practice with their students and things like that. So, and you can see the level, this is the high school. So they're doing journaling, they're doing cross-curricular activities in science, and then elementary, they're learning about how to do their clan introductions and all of that. And then some of our teachers actually have YouTube videos of their virtual learning instruction. So I don't know if you've seen some of Miss Martin's YouTube videos. You can go to YouTube and put Navajo language instruction, Mrs. Martin, and check out some of her videos. So just a lot of projects that they're able to do with the students. And I think this can be connected. I know like some of you have students with multiple tribes in your school, and you can kind of do the same thing. You can do a newsletter. Maybe you can choose themes for different tribes in honor, like a teaching for each tribe. I'm also doing a partnership project with BYU, where we're developing Navajo lessons, but I know BYU also has Paiute lessons, Northern Ute education lessons and things like that. So, but anyways, check this out sometimes. It's really, really a good resource. And some of the things that I was telling you we do, like this Pledge of Allegiance, these are kind of like some projects that I've done with the teachers.
Kaya ashkla dingo bithahod sohigi Bedatnat ae shith naligo benina biche adishne Hala ajo bato sihasen Yehadite
I lost my pointer.
As'a dene ye aheta hotilsen Binachike ajoba bizili bedahini tkan. At a nanan at ae be hotelsen Kea ashkla dingo etahodzohiki. Beta night ae shetneligo benina biche adishne. Hala ajoba do si hasen yihabit Kea asa an e as an dine ge a heta hodilsen. Binache ajoba bizili bedahini ta.
So those are just some things that we were able to do. This is the beauty beside me that we're able to do like a virtual read aloud using the actual reader from the CD that we have for the book. And then we just put that we don't own the rights, but we're using this for read aloud for educational purposes.
Beauty beside me. Stories of my grandmother's skirts. Written by Seraphine Yazzie. Illustrated by Bahi Whitethorn Sr.
Shimasane betla kashno tishiki njonago dash go bahane. Shimasane betla kashno tishiki that ego chudao Shimasane betla kashitsogi be ego chian leishe. A tales soze betla kashitsogi ishti. Ado datuli raj ayitnishi.
So that's one of the read alouds that we turned into virtual. We use screencasts, Google Docs to kind of create that. And then this connects you to our Facebook Heritage Language page. And then I also include resources for other people, like we have information on here from across Navajo country. I really like this video about the planting. So if I see that there's videos that our families and students can really use, I share it. And our families have really enjoyed the Shema storytelling, so they get on. And then this is one of the little mini video projects that I also did.
Tinecha sod benahoa. Nish klachiko. Left side. Nish klachiko. Nish klachiko that is knee. Nish najiko. Nish najiko. Right side. Nish najiko that is knee. Deko.
So just different resources that you can do for your students in their language. And one other thing that I wanted to share, going back to your language curriculum binder. So this is what our curriculum maps look like. We actually have third quarter and fourth quarter done. But this goes more into the standards, our learning targets, what vocabulary students will use, our formative assessments, and our projects. And this was created by the teachers together, and is using the Navajo language and content standards. And then we tried to integrate as much as possible with other subjects. And so this is an ongoing project. It's going to continue. Teachers will go back in there and they'll change it, like, well, I taught this lesson and it didn't go the way I thought, so I'm going to put in this other concept in there to meet this standard. So we do a lot of that work during our PLCs and PDs. We have 3 PLCs a month, which is on a Tuesday. The first 3 Tuesdays of each month we do PLCs. And then we do, I can show you an example. How much time do I have, Chuck?
You can probably take as much time as you want. I think this is really, really interesting. I just a comment on one of 2 of these things. I think these for me this is really therapeutic. Because a lot of times that I've been a classroom teacher as well as a principal, and we used to look for materials and supplies like this, and the other ones basically it's a philosophy that is something that we all sometimes crave for. Then the last thing is that this is a lifestyle of learning, especially for the Navajo people. I'm pretty sure that the other tribes, they do have the same scenarios in terms of therapeutic and the languages and the philosophy and their lifestyle. So that's just my comment. So
Okay. Well, if I have a little bit more time, I'll go and talk a little bit more about PLCs and PDs. So this is a sample that we have for Heritage Language PD agenda. This happened on February 12th, and we usually meet through Google. We're actually partnering with Star Schools from Flagstaff, and then we actually have other partners like Aneth Community School. So we have other teachers that join us when we do our PDs. And as much as possible, we try to incorporate a lot of Navajo teaching and philosophy. So like the objective for this meeting is so Heritage Language teachers will have an opportunity to collaborate and plan next steps for Q3 lesson plans. And then our essential question for this PD was, how will students learn about Navajo kinship and clanship? So with this whole agenda, teachers were able to really think about kinship and clans. And so when we met, teachers gave a lot of examples, like on how they teach kinship and then based on that, and I also did a presentation for them. So this was that presentation during that that PD. That's why I'm saying I have so many slideshows. Sometimes, I have to organize them because we do a lot of meetings, and teachers would say, well, remember that Google Slides that we did for February's PD? Can you send that to me? So I try to make my slides so that teachers can actually use them in their classroom if they want to, and then they can copy and paste it into another document and make it their own. So, so like this one, actually this one is, and I always find mistakes and then I just fix them. So, so this whole thing is about, the first person family relationship starts with the concept of which is our family structure. So I use as kind of a thing like, our family grows. So first it starts with our mom and our dad, and then it can go to or it might start with, the first kid might be shade and shana. So we talk about sisters, how to greet your sister and your brothers. Your older sister will be shade. Your older brother will be Shana, and your younger sister would be Shadeja. Younger brother would be Sitsila. So, and we talked about with teachers, like how would they present that lesson in their classroom? And a lot of them have a lot of creative ideas on how they would do that. Like having students make their own family tree, and then putting like pictures. It's their own project, so they can take a picture of what they created and then send it to their teacher for a grade. But it could be like their own family tree, and they can have a picture of themselves, and it could be a picture of their mom, and then they can put Shema Rosie, and then their dad, Shajaa Bob, So we try to connect that as much, and then extended family, like Shemayeja, Shadaa, Shnaa, Shazada. Of course, that's the building layers of teaching. So you're not going to start there with your kinder first students, but you're probably going to start with Shema Shajaa, Shade, Shana, or Shadeja, Shatsila. And then you can expand to our grandparents, because grandparents are so important in the Navajo culture. I'll just tell you a personal story. During the wintertime when I was growing up, my parents used to drop us off at our grandmother's house during the winter break. And so we have a lot of stories about things that we did in the wintertime. And we would go spend time with my grandmother, and she used to have these little, see, what did she used to call it? It was her own, I'm almost going to call it CA, but it's not CA. But she had her own way of running things in her household. And her hogan. So we had to go to sleep really early. So like I remember going to sleep like at 7 or 6, and I was like, oh, this is too early. But she would say, no, Jay, So we had no choice. We would get her sheepskin out and roll it out, and then go to bed. And so we would be talking, and she would say, get. I remember her saying that. and then in the morning, we would be waking up with her at 4 o'clock in the morning, and she would say, "Ndo Jay," and she would start making a lot of noise, and she lived in a hogan, so you could hear everything, and we had to get up, and we were just half awake, and then she would make us go outside and do an offering with her, and a lot of times we would just be holding on to her skirt. That's why I like that story, grandmother's skirt. We would be holding on to her skirt while she starts off with the prayer offering, and we would just listen at first. And then after a while, she started telling us, she would get mad at us. Pretty soon we would have to start praying with her. So, a lot of things like that, that's where these stories come from, is like the grandparents. They're so important in a child's life, and sometimes people don't understand that. They play a critical role, and they say, oh, Navajo families, they just have all their grandparents just raise their kids for them. Well, that was part of the traditional culture, was to take the grandkids, and have them spend time with their grandparents so they can learn the language, and they can learn a lot of the culture and the history and the ceremonies and songs. So, but to somebody, it might be harsh, like, oh, elder abuse, they're just watching over their kids, but really it's not. The grandparents are really play a critical role in fostering that language and that culture within their grandchildren. So, and when my grandmother passed away, she had more kids at her service than she had adults. So that's just something to think about in terms of family structure when you're teaching about that. And then one of the things that we also talked about within our PD that day was so our culture is so beautiful, and I'm sure with all of your different cultures that you have in your schools, it's probably the same way. There's probably such a rich and heritage culture that's presented from all the different tribes. So within our Navajo tribe, when a baby is born, it's such a precious time. And the mother and the father, mainly it's the mother's responsibility, but it's the family responsibility, where they introduce the baby to her clan family and her relatives. So this one, when a baby is born, the mom will say, Yat e shiyeje hashinet shewe adone and lenigi e di. So like if I was saying this to my son, I would say Yat e shiyeje hashinet shewe adone and lenigi e hatsoedene nile ado twitsotni bit ani bashin chain nana can sajini aidan the chedo twobahe aidan nale quit alwe asia await nile ayoninchne. So the mother tells the baby, my dear child, welcome to the world. you are from this clan, you're born for this clan. This clan is your grandparents from your maternal clan. This is your grandparents from your paternal clan. And so these are your relatives, and we love you. So this is what is said to every child, and then it goes on beyond that. Like if you had uncles or aunts or other people at that gathering, then they would say, "Oh yeah, you know." So then other relatives would go and greet the child. So that was such a special time, and the teachers were saying, if we only taught this more to our children, they would know how special and how wonderful they are in the world, and knowing that they come from a family that loves them and that comes from rich heritage and history. So and so when you think about it in that concept, and then really you don't have any orphans. You know, you always have family. You always have someone that you can greet as your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, or your grandparents. So, and getting a little older myself, I'm not a young chick anymore, but when I get an elder person that says, "Oh, Nashiyesha," you know, it really feels good because I lost both my parents. You know, I just lost my mom this past year, and lost my dad a couple years ago. So when somebody greets you as Shiyesha away, you know, Shina, that's like, you know, going to the core and almost like just touching your heart and saying, you know, and it makes you feel good. So, and that's what it does for our children. It really makes them feel good to know that they have family structure that they can go to. And then we talked about the groups of clans, Kia'ani, Hanagani, Tuadichini, Hashklishni, you know, the first clans, and then extended clans. And then how students can express themselves, how you can use like sentence stems, you know, like how we use sentence stems for writing when we're doing written expression in English. You can do the same thing in Navajo. You can do sentence stems for Navajo, and it really helps students. You could do also visuals, you know, like you can put a picture right here of the student. She you know, Brenda and she and sometimes even having the kids find a picture for their clans that will help them remember it. So like I said, we're very virtual learners. Our students are, they like to see a lot of visuals. So the more visuals that you can provide when you're teaching them these important concepts, the better. And then they can write like what group their clan is, and then they can go back and they can see, okay, group 5, these are my relatives from my maternal side. Group 9, these are my relatives from my paternal side, my dad's side. So like here, Sanajini, these are all my relatives. And it's really hard too, like to teach about clans. It can get confusing. So, but if you use charts and visuals, it's a lot easier to teach the clan system. And I'm not too familiar with like other tribal clan structures and how they teach kinship and family structure, but I'm sure you can use the same concept with the different tribes that are in your school. And then we use a lot of resources that are already out there. I'm all about not reinventing the wheel. If there's something that has already been created that can be very helpful for professional development and can help Navajo teachers, then we use that. So like here, these are all videos about kinship that teachers can go to, and they can just get those videos and they can use it. This is more about the written one. This is about the you know, the traditional perspective on kinship. So you'll just go here and click into it, and then
Grammarly can help you write quickly and confidently, so you never have to slow down at work. Stay on top of emails, documents, and more.
Sorry.
Anything that an individual did against another clan family, it made the whole clan, his clan, responsible to make all the restitutions and that would be required. And they call that in Navajo, they call it Navajo. We want to thank everybody for viewing our videos and, of course, allowing us to share with you traditional Navajo teachings. Today we're going to talk about Keh. Keh is probably the most important social identity among the Neh, especially the traditional Neh. Keh is by means of knowing how you are related to all other Neh. And the word Keh actually means family. The traditional teachings of the system of Keh is that every clan group has its own origin story. And of course, they have their own totems and their own mascot. Traditionally, clans was their family was very strict in the application of Keh. So it was that it was total family control. Keh as a means to help individuals to recognize their position in their families. Keh regulated how you were taught spiritual information and who was responsible for providing you learning about the traditional teachings of the.
So, like we've shared a lot of these resources that were already available to everybody, and they really really connected to what we were doing with our PD, connected how we were thinking about Keh and meeting those standards. So it's just like finding resources. So a lot of times in between being a program administrator, also finding resources, developing materials, thinking about professional learning for teachers. And I guess being a teacher myself at one time, I used to teach first, second, and third grade, and also being an instructional coach at one time and then a principal. It has really helped me to think about curriculum, about working with teachers in terms of how to develop curriculum and how to create activities for students that are thoughtfully planned and that are engaging and that have like deep thought process that students will go through and actually learning about their language and their culture. And I do know that there's a lot that still needs to be done. I know that there's a lot that we have to do to continue to preserve our language, but I feel like it's a community effort. So it's not just going to be Clayton, it's not just going to be me, or the Navajo language teachers. It has to really take the community and the families to say our language is important, our culture is important, and we need to preserve it, and we need to continue to teach it and thrive from it. So anyways, that's all I have to share. I can share more, but I think that's probably a little bit of overshare for some of you. So, but if you have any questions, just let me know. I do want to thank Chuck and his department for allowing me to present our information at this meeting. And I do appreciate being part of the Title VI group. And I am very appreciative of all the presentations that I hear, and glad to collaborate with everybody here on this call.
Well, thank you, Brenda. This is very, very insightful. A lot of information where we could use some of that information. I think you've answered most of those questions that were in the chat, and there are a few chat places where they couldn't get in. But I think the information is information that we can all use. You know, whether we're Navajos or not, I think this gives us a foundation in terms of building, you know, with the other tribes. And I'm pretty sure that the other tribes would be agreeable in terms of bringing their tribal languages and culture along too. So, you know, again, I'd like to thank you for that, for this presentation you did this morning. You know, there's some good resources, and I think I need to find your website and start to look into some of the information that I could also use. Hey, thanks again, Brenda.
Yep, you're welcome.
Yeah, you bet. Let's go to the next number 3 items. Title 3, or what am I saying? Title 6 updates. I have a few of them. First is the formula grant spending. You know, I got a little information on that from one of the colleagues here that's on board. You know, I guess the information was sent. You know, some of this information that is sent to you from OIE and the from Washington, I don't have privy to that. But I had one person send me some information in terms of the spending for the FY20 funds. You know, what I understand from this, I think everybody received that information, and it talks about referring to the summer school, tangible items and costs. I'm looking at the document now, and what I read from this is that if you do have funds that weren't completely spent this year, that's the FY20 funds, you could use that as summer school items or summer school programs. But I think most of you have already used that. So the next piece that they refer to that is that if you're going to do a summer school, you're going to have to dip into the 2021 funds. And I'm not so sure that you want to do that, because that will take away from some of the program money for next year or this coming fall. So if you could read that information again, and if you do have questions on that, maybe I could break that down a little bit more. But I just received this, and I made a few efforts to get a hold of that person who sent this email, and I hit a roadblock, and I haven't gotten an answer yet. So I'm still waiting for that answer. And they left a phone number too, and I also left phone messages. I left, well, two messages. One, the message that I left, and the second message was that their mailbox was full, or the phone connection was full. So so that's the part on the funding for your formula grant for the future. The Utah grants, I think most of you guys, or most of everybody, has submitted their application and has been approved, and hopefully that you could spend this the funding that was sent out. So for next year, the budget now, because of what was presented last week or last month from Sarah Young, you know, they had the ESSER 3 is beginning to roll around. So I had an opportunity to submit my budget to my supervisor to dip into that ESSER 3 funding for the Title VI sites. And so far they've approved the first level. but I think that approval has to go up the channel. And what I understand is that because of the amount of money that was sent through ESSER 3, that all those applications that are being submitted, they're most likely they're going to be approved. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed, and hopefully that that will all materialize for us. The last item is that I just like to thank you guys, but is there anybody out there that would like to share anything that is in your school district that is something that you'd like to share with the rest of the group? I have an opportunity to listen to the conference from Severe. Is Thomasia on? Well, let me just give you a small recap before Jeannie has her hand up. Last Saturday, she had her honoring ceremony. It was all virtual, and I think some of the students were there along with their parents. That was very, very intimate in terms of where they had the honoring ceremony. They had a guest speaker, which I thought was outstanding. And they had a breakout session later that afternoon. So that's just a recap of. I know that everybody's doing their honoring a little bit different from each other. So that was just one piece there. So I got a hand up. Jeannie, go ahead. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. If you'd be willing to share that, I sent you an email from the University of Utah, the Teacher Education Program, for some professional development that's going to be available in July. And Dr. Connor Warner and the Navajo teacher, I think, are doing that. And so for educators at our district, I think it would be valuable if they're willing to do something in the summertime, and they can get credit for it. It sounded like they could get credit for it. So Dr. Foster has that. And if you, Dr. Foster, could share that with everybody, then they can make it available however they would like to teachers in their district. Do you remember? I mean, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I did. I sent that out to everybody, but I can send it out again. That's just basically a reminder. What it is that they're offering a 1 credit hour course from the University of Utah, which you could use as professional development or credits toward your degrees. It's gonna that class is going to be offered. Connor Warner and Cynthia Benali. As you know, Cynthia Benali is an associate professor up there within the Department of Education. And I think this would be a good opportunity to spread that announcement. Matter of fact, it came through our superintendent at our building, and it came down to me. But I had that information received, and I sent it out. But I can send it out again now. It's offered in July, and I talked to my supervisor about that the other day when I received that. And my funding, see, what my plan was that for those people who are interested, this is my plan now, for those people who are interested, that if I had a gather of names, because it's $50 per person, and my plan was to submit the number of names to my supervisor, and hopefully that they could authorize that for purchase so everybody can attend. But I'll keep you guys updated on that and see where that's at. But I think this would be a great opportunity for you to take that class. And again, it's dealing with the educational arm of American Indians. So, any other out there? Penelope, do you have? I see that you have in the chat box. You'd like to give an update on the COVID vaccinations in the area.
Sure. So this weekend, April 17th, we will be having our COVID-19 Community Vaccination Day. However, we are on halt for distributing the Johnson & Johnson Janssen vaccine until further notice. But if you have a family member or loved ones who are over the age of 18 years old and would like to receive their vaccination at the Urban Indian Center, they can register by appointment only. All the information is on the website, and if you've already received your vaccination and you know of anyone who is living in household family members who are a client at the Urban Indian Center, they can receive their Moderna vaccination. We also have testing for COVID vaccinations daily, and so that's still offered at the Urban Indian Center. And if anyone is interested in the upcoming Hoop Day event, which is trying to bring that up now, it's an event for youth 10 to 24, and it is it's going to be held on Wednesday, April 21st, and it's a two-part hoop dance workshop, which you can still register. Tomorrow is the last day, and so they all actually are able to, if you don't want to participate in the actual hoop dance workshop and just want to view the hoop dance, that's also available. Everything is on our website. We're still ensuring that participants are still able to download our app, and that's it for me.
Okay, thanks, Penelope. Which is really interesting. I had my grandson. He took a basic hoop dance, and I disclosed this information to him. He says, "I want to sign up, Pa." So he's pretty excited about that too. Is there anybody else out there that would like to share? And if not, we'll close this session, and we'll see you guys May the 14th. Okay, again, I thank you for your attendance, and I know that there are a few that have other responsibilities and the other places that you need to go, and I thank you for your attendance, and I'd like to thank Brenda again for her presentation, and it's been wonderful to hear some of the information that you have out there for us, and so. Again, I thank you for all that you guys do, and stay safe, and we'll see you, if not earlier, May the 14th.